Hello there, guys and girls, and welcome to Road to Rome 2. And if you're new to the channel or you're a subscriber and you already know what the series is all about, I'm gonna tell you anyway. This is the series where we get the hype up for Rome 2 Total War, coming to us in October of 2013. And the way we do that, well, the way I do that is I play some multiplayer Rome Total War, going back to the roots of the game, and my aim is to win at least one battle with every faction in the game. So far we have done who have we done? We've done the Scythians, and we've done the Greeks, and today, my friends, we are going to do the Gauls. And now the Gauls are, at least for me, one of the hardest factions to play, just because they're so micro-intensive. You need to be able to keep track of every single one of your units, and be able to pop the abilities at the right time. In common sort of competitive play, you don't see a lot of Gauls, or at least when I did play Rome competitively, you didn't really see a lot of Gauls, just because of the types of maps that were played. A lot of maps didn't have any forests, a lot of maps didn't have any hills, because, you know, in Rome, nothing stops you from just camping this hill. You know, there is no timer, there is no sword dojo or whatever. But we'll get to how I use the forest in due time. Let's start with my opponent's army, actually. He brought a really sort of interesting army here. He's playing as the Seleucids, and he's got two of these militia cavalry. And these guys can do a lot of damage to an army that's not prepared to deal with them. So you can see here, he's going to just come up forward and start peppering my units. I'm going to pause so we take a good look at his army before the battle starts. This is a pretty long battle, so sit back, relax, and if you haven't already gotten a drink, pause the video and go get a drink. His front line is composed of, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units of these legionary silver shieldmen. Now these guys are sort of like the legionaries of Rome, but obviously worse stats. But again, against Gaul, they're a pretty good option, just because he's going to be able to sort of do a lot of damage to my swordsman, because he knows that's probably the unit I'm going to bring. And then he has a huge archer force. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think. 6 archers, and then 5 cataphracts at the back of that. So this army was very, very sort of intimidating for me to deal with. Just because this player knows that Gaul is going to try to outshoot you most of the time with its foresters, and he knows that they're going to be trying to do a lot of flanking, so he chose to go away from a phalanx and more with a heavily sort of archer cavalry component. Now, I have some units hidden in the forest here. I've got 2 of these barbarian nobles, 1 there. I've got 4 druids over here, and the druids are basically the warrior monks. The Naginata warrior monks of Rome Total War. They have an ability called Chant that you can activate, and that helps bolster your morale, and it scares enemies. So they're a really cool unit. So here my enemy is going to start harassing with his militia cav, and this is what militia cav do. They just run forward, throw stuff at you, and run back. So in response to this, I'm just going to do the best I can. The units that he's targeting, I'm gonna sort of try to put them in between of my swordsmen, which is the final component of my army. I've got 5 of these chosen swordsmen, and the only difference between my units and my opponent's units is that my units have some upgrades. Here I tried to do a sort of a chase. I wanted to chase one of his units, but his archers absolutely decimate my 2 cav that are hidden in the forest. Like, they just volley me a couple of times, and they just wreck me. I'm sorry I missed that, but those archers, I can't do cav charges, and now I'm basically left with 2.5. Well, this has 25 units. This one has routed with 16 units. Now it just came back, and this one is at full health. So I'm not gonna be having a great time here. So basically, my train of thought at this stage, I guess my opponent, like, if you look at his positioning, is actually pretty optimal in terms of hill management. But the only thing going for me is that some of my units are sort of in this crouched hidden mode, and I know they have extra cover when they do that. So soon enough, I'm going to try to abuse this. The fact that I have forests near me, the fact that Gauls are kind of like the barbarian sort of ambush faction, I'm going to try to line my people up in the forests. So that's what I'm gonna do. And I lose completely one of my foresters here. These guys got absolutely wrecked by militia cavalry and by constant archer barrages from my opponent. So far my opponent has definitely got the upper hand on me. But soon enough, I'm going to sort of nullify. I keep saying sort of. If that pisses you off, I am terribly sorry. And by the way, if you hear excuse me, if you hear like construction happening outside, that's okay. There's a new building happening outside. So here my opponent does a weird thing. He's going to basically throw his militia cav right at my line, and I think the reason he does this is because he wants to get his archers in range to fire at my guys. And my response to that was to basically throw my cav units at his archer line as fast as I can. So he tries to get some scouting information. He loses a unit. He tries to bring his archers forward, but I'm going to counter with my cavalry just to make sure that my units don't get shot. I mean, he could sit there and shoot me all day, but as long as I'm in this perfectly movie-like, Hollywood-like stance, without the shields even pointing up, you can imagine them, like when the arrows come down, like they all point their shields up in an epic, glorious manner, and do it. So here, another engagement happens. My opponent is going to begin trying to harass me with his cav. He sees that two of my foresters are isolated. I'm going to quickly activate Warcry on two of my chosen warsword units, catch them. This unit of forester gets caught, unfortunately, but now that my druids and my swordsmen are in the battle, and I spring my last unit of barbarian noble cav, my opponent realizes this is a bad place to be, and he's going to try to pull out with his cataphracts, but they're too bunched up here. I realize this one is too far away for me to get, so I'm going to try and get around here, get in the gap, and hopefully get a nice little strike at the back of those cataphracts who are now trying to go through my units to get away from it. But it's going to be too late here, and they're going to get smashed. And this is the enemy general. So my opponent does a huge mistake here, and essentially throws his general away. But to be fair to him, he didn't know that I had this cav unit. And this cav unit, the fact that it was hidden in the forest, allowed me to kill my opponent's general. So now I have a chance. If I can keep playing this very patiently, and if I can use the terrain to my advantage, I actually may... excuse me, it's flu season. I might actually be able to win, you know, maybe, I don't know, at this stage, I think when I was playing, I was still kind of not confident that I would be able to pull it off. I would have needed to microed my units really well to actually win this battle, but we'll see what goes, we'll see what happens. I think it was an interesting battle nonetheless. I'm gonna pull my cav back in the trees here and hide them, and now, my forester warbands, as you would guess from their name, have a bonus in the forest. They get cover, and they fire better. So my opponent here, by using flaming arrows, is not really achieving anything. The morale effect, or sort of morale penalty, is not really worth it, because his arrows are going to miss, and even when they do come in, notice that they're simply not doing any damage to my units, just because of the extreme amount of cover that Gaul gets in the trees. Now, when I picked this map, I'm not gonna pretend to know that this map was, you know, that it had forest in it. I just saw, hey, Illyrian Valley, this looks cool, and I just picked it. But say on a map like the Flats or one of the desert maps, it would be totally useless. So my opponent here is gonna throw another militia cav at me. My druids are gonna take the charge like champs, but again, he's doing this to be able to bring his archers forward, and I think I'm gonna respond right now. No. Am I? Yeah, this is what's gonna happen. My opponent comes in here. He sees that the only unit that he can see is my general, because my general, who is a druid, cannot hide. Do you see him? He's standing right there. Generals can't hide in Rome. And he's gonna do one volley on my foresters, try to weaken them a little bit, get a little bit closer, and then he's gonna start targeting my general very quickly here. So let's go ahead and speed up to the point where that happens. He's still firing at my foresters, but no matter how close he's going to get, my foresters are still going to be able to actually outshoot him. So if you look at the deaths, I've got 47 here. They're panicked by fire attack. It says 44, 45, but his units are getting demolished. 33, 31, 45. So it's a 3v2 right now. He's got one full archer unit almost at the back there that he's not using. And now he's going to start targeting my druid general. And this is when I realize, okay, well, this druid general is going to take a lot of damage They are still in the trees, so they kind of get some cover, but they're not in this sort of crouched, hidden awesome mode. I think eventually these guys are going to go down to 24 men before I actually react, which is pretty bad on my part, but I figured, I can do a little bit more damage to his units here. And I think I'm going to time it with a... Yeah, my plan here, okay, I saw my general getting fired at. I was like, alright, I'm going to have my foresters load or fire at least one volley of flaming arrows, and at the same time, I'm going to do a premature sort of infantry engagement, something that looks like that. I'm going to run my troops forward, and these guys are going to act as basically a morale lowering factor, and as the flaming arrows come in, my foresters, my chosen swordsmen come out of the forest, and I was hoping I would get some routes, and I do. I get 2 routes on these archer units, and they're trying to run back now, and trying to get behind their line, and my opponent now is going to come down his hill, and this is good. I want to entice him. I wanted to make it seem to him that he's losing the battle, when in reality he's really not. I mean, he still has so much cav left. All he needs to do is do a straightforward engagement, get a gap around my druids, and get his cavalry in the rear. The power of the Seleucids is its cavalry, and my opponent has not been using it well at all this battle. Whereas for my part, my power is that I have these trees, and I'm using the trees so well. I'm clinging onto the trees as much as I can. And now the battle is going to start. I pop Warcry. I pop the Chant ability, and I'm going to get a passive charge on these units. They are going to fire one sort of a volley of peel up, but that's not going to be enough. Here comes his cav. He's going to charge my druids with his cav. The druids are not going to do terribly well against cav, but they're also not going to do terribly badly. They're going to do well. They act as a nice bait here, and I'm going to slam into them with 2 more druids. In the middle here, due to the fact that I have druids who have just used Chant on the edges here of the battle, and these chosen swordsmen have got Warcry, my opponent's line starts to crumble. Also, he doesn't have his general. So with my opponent lines crumbling, he's going to throw his cav at me. He's going to try to catch my barbarian cav, but I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to run them away, and now those cataphracts are in the trees. They lose their charge bonus, and I'm just going to run behind my lines and have units latch on to these cataphracts. See these cataphracts running forward, and units from the front line that have had success turn around and smash into them. And now my cavalry is now going to come back and assist in this mayhem, and my opponent loses his entire line and his entire cavalry. I wasn't, like, when I played this, I was in shock. I was like, oh my god, I'm pulling it off. I'm playing Gaul properly. Yes, I was very happy. So now I'm gonna run my noble cav up. I wanted to send them around here to get around at the archers, but at this stage, all I need to do is keep my units together. My opponent is going to be doing some nice charges here at my isolated units, but a charge against an infantry unit isn't really gonna do much. Like that, and I think he hadn't even been using the alt attack. So in Rome, if you alt attack with a lot of units, they switch to their secondary weapon. If I was my opponent now, I just would have left, but I think he wanted to fight to the last man, which is fine. A lot of druids, in fact, all of my main infantry forces, albeit are damaged, are all still there. I still have 4 druids and 5 of my swordsmen alive, and the reason for that is because before I engaged, and this is something you need to keep in mind if you're playing Gaul, you have to activate your war chant or war cry ability, and the reason you do that is, well, it's going to give you a boost for a short period of time, and when you bring your druids in and you pop chant, which is essentially war cry, if you're a shogun player, then you're going to be able to do a lot of morale damage. And at the same time, your foresters can be firing their flaming arrows, and the morale penalty will just be too much for an enemy, especially when he loses his general. If he had his general left, I don't think this would have worked, just because of the sheer amount of numbers that he had. He definitely brought the right build, but I think my opponent did some mistakes, and I think I used the forest better than he used his advantages. So that was the Battle of Gaul. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode number 3 of The Road to Rome 2. Thanks for watching, guys. Remember to comment, thumbs up, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.